the sky tore open without warning. One moment, the world was still, trapped in its normal rhythm of noise, traffic, arguments, and breath. The next, every screen from pocket phones to orbiting satellite NASA went black. Then came the sound, cold, unified, and unnervingly calm. This message is addressed to the planetary species designator, human. You have 7 Earth rotations to surrender. No flare, no explosion, just words and they cut deeper than any weapon. The voice was neither human nor alien. It felt constructed to bypass emotion entirely. Artificial, metallic, and godless. Failure to kneel within this cycle will result in total cognitive extinction. Resistance will be logged as obsolete behavior. In cities, in war rooms, in farms and underground shelters, people froze. Not because they lacked weapons but because this wasn't an invasion. This was a ritual, a precise, rehearsed psychological dismantling of one they had practiced across galaxies. This was how they broke species before destroying them. Earth wasn't being attacked, it was being warned, and the sky was the messenger. As the broadcast continued, the visuals began. Holographic projections filled the sky over every major capital. Massive vessels hung like shadows with glowing emblems as symbols of a power so ancient and arrogant it didn't even feel the need to fire. They were not here to fight, they were here to claim. The countdown began, and the first rotation ticked forward like a blade over a neck. In bunkers beneath Geneva, Washington, Shanghai, and Johannesburg, Earth's top military alliances tried to coordinate a response, but something was off. The invaders weren't jamming the networks, they were the network. The voice spoke again. Observe day 1. You may grieve, you may organize, it will not matter. Day 7 is final. And then it stopped. No more transmission. The skies cleared. Life resumed. A broken bar technically, but in homes, people stopped eating. In offices, silence replaced conversation. In cities, even noise had fear in it. The silence didn't last long, because on one rooftop in Lagos, a street artist climbed up, spray can in hand, and painted across the side of a government drone 4 letters, "Try us." Then she laughed. It was loud, not mocking, a defiant, a sound that felt misplaced in the gloom, and it was caught on film. That clip traveled faster than the alien signal ever had. It was raw, stupid, perfect. In a Detroit subway station, an old man heard the broadcast and muttered to no one, 7 days. That's cute. We've lived through worse in one. In Tokyo, a retired hacker who once crashed the city grid during a heatwave cracked a smile. I've been bored, she said. In the Andes, a tribe that had no access to the transmission still noticed the clouds moving wrong. When a researcher tried to explain the alien message, the elder simply said, "So the gods are angry, let them be." The first ripple of the human response wasn't strategy, it was attitude. The invaders hadn't studied that. As night fell on this first day, across every zone of command, a single question emerged, not asked aloud but known in every glance: what are we going to do? But behind locked doors, the answer had already been decided. Nothing, not yet, because humans, unlike most species, understood something critical about war. Fear is most effective when it festers, and the invaders had made a mistake. They gave Earth time, and in that time a broken bar something dangerous began to stir. Not weapons, not armies, imagination. Back inside the orbiting control deck of the lead alien command ship, the overseer waited. It had seen over 60 species bowing fear before day 3, and yet a broken bar. Earth was too quiet. No submission, no desperation signals, just a broken bar stillness. It considered transmitting another threat, but protocols were clear: let them sink in it. The overseer did not realize what humans become when left alone with fear, because fear doesn't freeze us, it sharpens us. And in basements, garages, bunkers, and forums, Earth wasn't mourning, it was preparing. And the invaders' silence had one effect they never predicted: it united us. As the clock passed into the final hours of day 1, a new signal blinked across the alien surveillance matrix. It was not encrypted, it was not military, it was a pirate signal. And then a broken bar, a laugh, clear, human. Then a face, one man, shirt torn, dirt on his cheek. He stared into the camera and said, 7 days. You should have made it 1. And the screen went black. Inside the alien control ship, The overseer's neural clusters paused, unsure. For the first time, it hesitated, because that a broken bar was not fear, and that broadcast a broken bar was only the beginning. Now came day 2, and with it the moment humanity would show what still hides under its skin. A broken bar. The screen went black, but the echo of that man's voice, calm, ragged, and laughing in defiance, continued to reverberate across the alien command network like static inside the bones of their ships. The overseer, for the first time in its recorded existence, ordered silence, not to maintain control but to understand what it had just witnessed. Across its neural relay cores, simulations ran with frantic precision. Human psychology was an outlier in every war they'd ever studied. They feared death but invited it. They begged but smiled through it. And now, faced with extinction, they were broadcasting mockery. Something was off, terribly off. The aliens had seen defiance before. Primitive worlds sometimes resisted, but this wasn't resistance, it wasn't rebellion, it was a dare. Within hours, the Concorde sent fleet-wide notifications, increase surveillance, scan for hidden weapon silos, measure communication networks, and detect anomalies in military activity. The ships obeyed. Sensors were calibrated, but what they found, a broken bar, was nothing. No troop mobilizations, no fleet launches, no nuclear preps. The humans weren't preparing for battle. They were going quiet, too quiet, and that silence didn't reflect fear. It mirrored intent. Inside Earth's shadow war rooms, a pattern was forming, not from orders, not from central governments, but from fragments, independent networks, civilian systems, pirate frequencies. People were sharing information, strategies, resources, but more than that, energy. The joke broadcast had ignited something beneath humanity's surface, a truth the aliens had missed, because humans don't always respond to threats with strategy. Sometimes as a broken bar they respond with personality. In Berlin, a street musician set up under the shadow of a projection drone and played Beethoven on a scorched piano. The drone scanned him. He didn't flinch. He simply grinned and said, "Thought you'd enjoy some culture before you get your ass kicked." The footage went viral, not on linear because the aliens had shut that down. It spread by hand, by word, by defiance. In SA-Apollo, someone hacked an abandoned concert screen and projected the human message again. This time with new edits, images of alien fleets crashing in old sci-fi movies, spliced with laughter tracks and dancing soldiers. It wasn't resistance, it was psychological warfare. And the aliens didn't know how to respond. They thought silence would paralyze Earth. Instead, it gave humanity time to evolve. Because the aliens' plan had followed a strict pattern: deliver ultimatum, crush communications, isolate leadership, induce panic, and force submission by day 3. But Earth hadn't entered panic, it had entered adaptation. In underground labs, rogue scientists used 3D printers to build jamming beacons from household appliances. College students translated alien broadcasts into viral songs. Ex-special forces used delivery drones to map alien flight paths and catalog weapon weaknesses. The overseer received reports of anomalous human activity but found no strategic threat. What it didn't see, or what it couldn't see, was that the threat wasn't in missiles, it was in mindset. Because across the world, from mountain caves to broken city streets, people weren't surrendering. They were preparing for the long game, not to win by power, but to win by being unbreakable. In the command vessel, alien war analysts tried to decode the logic behind humanity's behavior. Why no central command? Why no mass surrender or uprising? They couldn't find a hierarchy, couldn't locate a single voice to silence. Because Earth's strength wasn't in one man, or one army, it was in every citizen who refused to kneel. And then, the second broadcast arrived. It wasn't human, it was alien. From one of their own ships, the voice trembled as shaken, not by enemy fire, but by doubt. "I don't think we understand this species," it said. "They are not reacting, they are learning. Every second we wait, they are a broken bar evolving." The overseer silenced the message, but the damage was done. A crack had formed, a fracture in the very mindset of a species that had never before questioned its dominance. And Earth hadn't fired a single shot. That was the moment something shifted, not in tactics, but in spirit. The alien fleet had come to break a planet, but now, They were being studied by it. Earth had stopped being prey and started being a mirror, one that reflected back the weaknesses their empire never dared to acknowledge: arrogance, rigidity, and fear of change. And so, as the second day approached, the overseer intensified scans, prepared countermeasures, ordered troop discipline, but nothing could erase the echo of what had already begun. Earth was infecting Thema not with weapons, but with doubt, and as day 2 fell into the shadow of night, and alien ships hovered in uneasy formation, their sensors caught one last message etched into the ruins of a destroyed Earth city. "We don't need 7 days, we only needed you a broken bar to watch." And from that point onward, the aliens would never again believe that silence meant safety, because now broken bar it was Earth's turn to speak. The skies trembled with the silence too loud to ignore. Hovering in low Earth orbit, the alien fleet held its position, scanning, watching, adjusting its strategy, but never truly understanding what had already begun. Their plan had unraveled before it even fully launched, because that linea painted across crumbled buildings and broadcast in static echo as a still lingered like radiation in their cognitive grid. "We only needed you to watch." And then, without warning, their own systems began to betray them, not through sabotage, through interruption. Across the communication array of their primary cruiser, a flicker broke the protocol screen. The interface, once clean and precise, pulsed red for exactly 2 seconds. Then, just as quickly, it dissolved into static. Then came the signal. Not encrypted, not hidden. It arrived openly, almost arrogantly. And for 9.7 seconds, the alien fleet's command hub froze, because what they saw wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning. It was something far worse. A single human, standing shirtless, bruised, defiant on what looked like a rooftop, surrounded by fallen concrete and cracked satellite dishes. The man didn't speak immediately. He just looked into the camera, not with fear, not with rage, with amusement. And they know he laughed. Not maniacally, not desperately. He laughed like someone who already knew the ending of the story and pitied the fool trying to rewrite it. It wasn't the message itself that shook them. It was the timing, the confidence, the intention, the fact that this unknown man had hijacked the system designed to resist quantum disruption with bare hands and rusted tech. He didn't say where he was, didn't mention coordinates, didn't beg for peace. He just leaned forward and said, "7 days is generous, you won't last one." And the screen went black. Inside the overseer's cerebral link chamber, there was silence, but not from discipline, from discomfort. The voice of a single human had reached their core systems, which meant their defenses weren't as unbreakable as they'd claimed. But worse, it meant this man wanted them to know. Alien subroutines immediately flagged it as low-level psychological warfare, a bluff, a cultural attempt to sow uncertainty. But the overseer didn't believe in glitches anymore, because this wasn't the first human broadcast, it was the third, and it came with no traceable source, no satellite, no relay, not even a frequency fingerprint. It simply existed, like a ghost whispering into the heart of their machines. Across the fleet, alien tacticians began rerouting their focus. They intensified surveillance of civilian zones, ordered scans for underground signal towers, but their maps showed nothing, just an ocean of scattered heat signatures and crumbling infrastructure. Yet somehow, they knew they were being watched back, and what unsettled them most a broken bar was the rhythm. The humans weren't panicking, they weren't retaliating, they were responding. Every few hours, another pulse, another message, another strange signal with no origin, just content, footage of humans training in shadows, engineers welding in silence, children drawing pictures of their world on cracked cement. Writing above them, still hours. The aliens couldn't understand it. There was no order, no hierarchy, and yet, the signals were coordinated, not centrally, culturally, like a species that didn't need a general to march, just a reason to stand. The overseer convened with a fifth Minda, a higher-order artificial intelligence developed for predicting resistance behavior. It tasked a single question: if this species is bluffing, why do they laugh at their own extinction? The AI had no answer, but the humans did, because by the time day 2 began, the signal appeared again, up this time not from a man, but a child, no older than 10, standing beside a wall painted with fire and stars. She smiled and said, "You think we're afraid of dying? We made movies about this before you even existed." And then she walked away. That clip played over and over in alien command terminals, not because it was threatening, but because it wasn't. It was unshakable, and that terrified them, because the aliens had promised to break Earth's will in 7 days. But they were discovering hour by hour, voice by voice, that will isn't measured in days, it's measured in meaning. And these humans, they didn't fear defeat, they feared silence. And now they had the microphone. The alien command core watched the third signal, and there were no coordinates, no demands, only 3 words in white, faded text: "Try us again." And deep within the minds of the alien leadership, a question formed: if this was data a broken bar, what would Day 3 feel like? A broken bar when the humans stopped talking and started moving? The alien high command had watched planets burn before. They'd seen worlds surrender in silence, civilizations collapse in sobs, species with thousands of years of history erased in the shadow of their warships. But never, not on Scifi, had they encountered this. Earth wasn't sending pleas, Earth was sending messages. And not just words, but something deeper, something unquantifiable: tone, rhythm, nerve. As the second day pressed forward, an uneasy realization settled over the alien fleet. This wasn't a planetary defense, this was something else, something far more dangerous than weapons. It was confidence, and it was spreading, from the slums of Mumbai to the alleyways of Chicago, from the frozen plains of Siberia to the scorched villages of sub-Saharan Africa. Humans were reacting not with unity but with sync. Without command or central coordination, Earth was building a response the aliens couldn't understand. There were no armies mobilizing, there were no presidents giving speeches, and yet there was motion, signals, glitches, rumors, and, worst of all, laughter. By mid-morning, a new form of resistance began, and not physical, but cultural. The aliens' frequency bands, so carefully protected and encrypted with millennia-old technology, began to fracture, not from hacking, from overload. Their systems weren't being attacked, they were being flooded with songs of every language, every genre, every emotional spectrum. Musica aggressive, soft, rhythmic, discordant began to infiltrate their communication fields. Thousands of channels blaring centuries of human struggle and triumph. Opera, metal, folk, jazz, war drums, children's lullabies, songs that had once echoed in trenches, inside slave ships, through rebellion chambers, and now a broken bar inside the control decks of their pristine warcraft. One alien commander tore off his Neuralink in confusion as a track looped endlessly in his Minda, an old Earth song, brash and off-key, screaming, "This is our house." Another tried to filter the interference, only to have their own ships begin repeating Earth phrases in broken English. Not commands, not threats, but jokes. The human voice had become a virus, not one of code or corruption but one of identity. And the worst part, the aliens hadn't stopped it, because they didn't know how. Their understanding of warfare was built on pattern recognition. Scan the species, break the chain of leadership, strike the cultural core, replace myth with fear. But Earth had no central myth, no single leader, no predictable code of collapse. Every time they found only another rose, every time they silenced a frequency 10 more erupted. In one bizarre moment, the aliens witnessed an entire city's traffic system hijacked, and not to disable vehicles, but to play an ancient civil rights speech on every billboard, crosswalk, and intersection. The words echoed across the ruins: "We will not go quietly into the night." A broken bar. And they didn't. They grew louder, even as ships hovered above cities, even as surveillance drones watched every move. Humans stopped hiding their resistance, they celebrated it. A cafe in Marseille reopened, not with food, but with paintings. Each canvas depicted alien invaders falling from the sky in exaggerated cartoon form. The artists served no customers, they simply painted and laughed as alien patrols watched, powerless to understand the impact of mockery. In Brazil, a flash mob formed under a Warcraft's shadow, with thousands dancing to tribal drums and techno remixes. It wasn't rebellion, it was noise. Beautiful, maddening noise that couldn't be predicted, couldn't be mapped, couldn't be controlled. The aliens were trained to destroy empires, but not joy, not this kind. Inside the alien fleet's command core, The overseer made a chilling admission to the fifth mind. They are not fighting us. They are rewriting us. The mind responded with silence, because even its quantum intelligence couldn't compute a defense against culture. The human response had bypassed the battlefield entirely. It went straight to belief, and just when the alien fleet thought they had begun to understand it, the next signal arrived. This time, it wasn't a voice, it was an image. A photo taken from an alien surveillance drone hacked, altered, and now broadcasted across their own encrypted network. It showed a single human child, no older than 8, standing atop the wreckage of a scorched school bus. The child wasn't crying, he wasn't hiding, he was smiling. And behind him, graffiti had been scrawled across the shattered ground in a dozen languages. "Your fear is showing." The message didn't just sting, it penetrated. And in the quiet corridors of the overseer's vessel, for the first time, a strategic protocol was updated, and not to attack Earth, but to reassess Earth's threat classification. Humans were no longer labeled as fragmented prey. They were now unpredictable adversaries. The reclassification spread across the fleet like a cold wind in a locked room. Officers avoided eye contact. Analysts buried data. Soldiers reviewed footage with muted screens. Because Earth hadn't fought back with weapons, it had fought back with self. And they realized it far too late that breaking Earth's will wasn't a countdown, a broken bar, it was a trap. And now, as Day 3 approached, the overseer began to ask a question it had never been programmed to consider. What happens when the species you plan to crush a broken bar starts aiming at your spirit instead? The overseer's neural core pulsed colder than ever before. Earth's behavioral profile had mutated so rapidly that no predictive algorithm could keep up. Day 3 hadn't even fully begun, but the invasion fleet's data clusters were already flooded with contradictions. A species deemed primitive, emotionally unstable, and technologically inferior was now doing something no world had done before, not defending itself, but mirroring its enemies' doubt back at them. And now, that mirror cracked the aliens where they feared it most, inside their hierarchy. The first breakdown happened aboard a recon vessel stationed above Southeast Asia. An alien lieutenant barely past its growth phase, he questioned its superior aloud during a routine observation scan. "What if," it asked, "they know something we don't?" The command officer dismissed it immediately, but the hesitation was logged, not because of protocol but because it wasn't the first. Across the fleet, subtle but undeniable fractures began forming in the rigid, obedient mindset of the invaders. The Empire had ruled through certainty, through control, but Earth's response was eroding something deeper, a belief. The belief that domination was inevitable, that their species, forged from millennia of victory, was immune to psychological warfare. But Earth was teaching them a lesson in identity conflict, and no algorithm could reverse it. The shift accelerated when a rogue transmission from a hidden outpost in northern Canada broke through the alien fleet's interference field. The message was not violent, it wasn't even spoken by a soldier, it was an old woman, her voice ill-weathered, low, and steady, floated across the open channels like wind through shattered glass. "You thought we'd beg, you thought we'd scatter, but listen carefully. You've come face to face with something you don't understand. We don't fight because we want to win, we fight because we remember." Then she paused. Her final words were clear: "We remember everything." Those 4 words hit harder than any weapon, because no machine, no logic structure, could interpret the power of memory. The aliens had erased histories of hundreds of species across galaxies, but humans held on to their pain, wore it, carved it into film, music, poetry, walls, stories, scars. Earth had been invaded before you by its own kind, by time, by nature, but it never forgot, and that memory now stared up at the invaders like fire under ice. Inside the fifth mind's response chamber, panic crept into the analytical loops. Reports from sub-command vessels were becoming erratic. Lower-ranking operatives were failing to execute basic maneuvers, not because of sabotage, but because they were hesitating. They had never been trained to interpret cultural resistance, and now, every human message felt like a puzzle they were terrified to solve. In a moment of desperation, the overseer initiated an emergency experiment. To suppress doubt, it ordered a display of overwhelming force, a minor settlement in a remote desert region of Earth untouched and silent. It was selected for demonstration. The attack was swift, precise, brutal. From orbit, a single beam reduced the outpost to molten rock in less than 3 seconds. No casualties, no strategic value, just a message, or so they thought. But Earth's reply came, not with fear but with fury. Within minutes, their fleet's transmission grid was infiltrated once again. This time, the video feed didn't come from a child or a civilian. It came from a group, masked, standing in darkness. Soldiers, hackers, civilians, it didn't matter. The message was, what did the damage? You want to scare us with fire? The voice asked. We grew up with fire. We built cities in it. We forged steel inside it. We buried the ones we loved beneath it. You think heat breaks us? Heat made us. And then they lit a torch. One by one, hundreds of them. The signal zoomed out to show crowds across continents holding flame as torches, candles, bonfires burning, not in panic, but in ritual. A ritual of memory, a ritual of resistance. And across the alien fleet, for the first time in its long and brutal legacy of conquest, soldiers began whispering to one another, not commands, not code but questions. Why do they not yield? What if this species' a broken bar can't be broken? The overseer tried to regain control. It issued suppressive commands, reset propaganda protocols, ordered ship-wide meditation broadcasts to stabilize neural cohesion. But it was too late. The disease had already spread. Doubt had infected the collective, and Earth had done it a broken bar with a story. One passed in flames. The alien fleet, built to crush stone and silence stars, was now facing its first real enemy, meaning. And in its cold mechanical heart, it knew the countdown it gave humanity was now counting against it. And day 4, a broken bar, would be the moment humans stopped showing defiance, and started showing teeth. Cedilla superscript A. A diaresis 1/2 E inverted exclamation mark pilcro Cedilla macron. Cedilla superscript A. A diaresis 1/2 A ring superscript O Cedilla macron. And when day 4 came, they finally saw it, and not the anger, not the chaos, not the scattered resistance they had anticipated. They saw unity, cold, precise, unshakable unity. But not in the way they understood it. Earth didn't rise with flags and war songs. It rose with coordination, a silent, invisible, impossible to trace. The moment humans stopped showing defiance and started showing teeth, the alien fleet realized it had misread the species from the very first moment. At 4:11 GMT, 13 alien satellites monitoring Earth's upper hemisphere went dark. The signals weren't blockaded, they were repurposed. Someone, or something, had overridden their control systems from within. That shouldn't have been possible. Their tech operated on a frequency undetectable to human instruments. But now, Earth had found it, and used it. The first internal alarm echoed across the overseer's flagship. Contamination protocol breach. Internal system compromise. For a brief moment, the ship's entire hull dimmed, its atmosphere adjusting to a temperature fluctuation that hadn't been initiated by any crew command. Someone had entered their network, and left a message. Not long, not even threatening, just 2 words. Still watching. That was the moment they understood they hadn't just underestimated Earth's capacity for psychological warfare. They had failed to grasp the scale of Earth's adaptive thinking. Humans didn't merely resist, they learned while resisting. Every drone strike, every mine probe, every failed infiltration. Earth remembered every detail and quietly evolved around it. This wasn't rebellion anymore. It was a calculated comeback, and it was surgical. In Nairobi, an alien command relay center was disrupted by a blackout that lasted exactly 47 seconds, long enough for local resistance to intercept the code transmission and identify fleet deployment zones. No gunfire, no explosions, just data harvested, stored, and transmitted back into the shadows. In Tokyo, alien patrols began noticing strange interference whenever their surveillance equipment focused on high-density human zones. The interference wasn't static, it was synthetic camouflage, generated from reflective materials hung from rooftops and projected back in pulsating loops of corrupted alien glyphs, the humans had begun to understand. In underground bunkers, Scientists who had once studied Earth's ionosphere for peaceful signals were now manipulating those same frequencies to create blinding feedback loops within alien detection systems. Each pulse rendered a scout blind for 6.3 seconds, just long enough for Earth's new phantom operatives to disappear from sight. No one had ordered this. There was no central command giving instructions. But humans didn't need a single voice to rise. They needed reason, and now they had one, because Day 4 wasn't the beginning of Earth's military response. It was the beginning of coordinated disruption, the kind of warfare that didn't wear armor or wave banners, the kind of warfare that didn't ask permission, the kind that whispered from within walls, crept through cables, and laughed through repurposed enemy signals. The aliens had come expecting a primitive, fractured planet, but what they had found was a species that turned pain into pattern, pattern into innovation, and innovation into leverage. And now, the fleet wasn't losing ships, it was losing control. When one patrol vessel hovered above New York for its scheduled scan, it suddenly froze midair. All thruster activity ceased. No warning, no energy spike. The ship floated like a statue, lifeless, unpowered. Moments later, it rebooted. Everything seemed normal until the crew realized their internal logs had been wiped clean, replaced with one single, untranslated audio clip of a human heartbeat. No explosion, no confrontation, just a reminder. Earth was inside now, and it wasn't asking questions. It was learning from every alien mistake, every arrogance, every signal they sent, every weapon they fired. Every assumption they carried. It all became fuel for the very species they thought would bow within 7 days. Now, by Day 4, Earth wasn't just fighting, it was adapting faster than they could calculate. The fifth mind requested a complete reevaluation of the species classification system. Humanity, it reported, no longer fits within any conquest profile. But it was too late. The tipping point had already arrived, and the overseer knew it when the transmission logs began showing internal queries not from Earth or Broken Bar but from their own lower ranks. Questions, hesitations, doubt. One soldier sent an anonymous message to Central Command. What if we're the ones trapped here? And that fear, that single sliver of mental rebellion, it was the fracture Earth had been waiting for. Because now, Earth didn't have to break the fleet, it just had to watch them break themselves. And as the sun rose over a battered Earth on Day 5, it wasn't light that greeted the alien armada. It was the sound of silencia, one so focused, so charged with intent, that even the machines listening to it began to hesitate. And somewhere beneath that silencia, Broken Bar humanity was smiling.